everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Australian CFO Show. I am absolutely thrilled to have Alice Gates, who is the finance partner at the e-commerce business at Coles. So really excited to have Alice here today and understand a little bit more about what the giant that is Coles does on the e-com side and all of the work that you do there. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I was very honoured to be here. So yeah, hello, and
Awesome.
really pleased to show.
Looks like I am surrounded in a bit of a halo or an angel glow
Angelic.
today.
Yeah, beautiful.
So maybe you could give us a bit of an overview of your career to date.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have about 12 years experience in finance. So I started my career here in Melbourne at PwC. So I was in the assurance division here, working within the consumer industry sector. And that really kind of propelled my love for retail and working with consumer facing products and industries. So I was with PwC for about 3 years, started as a graduate before moving across into industry where I got my first job at the Just Group. So in that role was initially in the financial accounting team, doing all things kind of financial accounting, statutory reporting in nature, and then quickly moved into a business partnering role. I'd really kind of looked across the other side of the house and saw that that was really much more kind of business partnering, working with lots of various stakeholders. And I saw that that was really where my passion lied, was really kind of in that stakeholder management kind of business partnering aspect of finance. And so I moved across into that role where I was for about 2 years supporting some brand managers, visual merchandising folks, marketing, kind of a whole plethora of varied stakeholders, and really loved that. You know, I could touch and feel the garments that we were selling. I could, see the seasonal patterns as well. It all kind of made sense to me from a finance perspective. But I'd always really wanted to live and work abroad, and the US was somewhere that I'd lived previously as a kid, and it's just, super economy. Has such a huge influence from a global scale, and so I really wanted to be a part of that and get a taste for it. So packed my bags, kind of hoped for the best, and got a job at a bunch of scale ups during the 5 years that I was there. So the first company that I worked at was a ticketing based business that was part of a public company at the time called Pandora, which is a radio streaming service. So having no prior tech experience, like it was, we had the benefit of being a small kind of offshoot of a larger beast being Pandora, but it gave me that first kind of foray into whole P&L oversight and responsibility. So so we'd report up into Pandora being our HQ. And I was responsible for all things from a P&L kind of oversight perspective. They were eventually, so Ticketfly, the company that I was working for, was eventually divested from Pandora and sold off to Eventbrite. And that was a really interesting process to go through, especially as a visa holder, not a permanent kind of citizen at the time. So a little unsettling, but it really kind of like made me reassess, like, what was I missing from a career perspective? Like, what did I want to achieve while I was in the States? And I noted that, I'd never worked for a private company before. I'd never worked for a small scrappy startup, which is, what kind of San Francisco is ripe for. And so I, really tried to kind of track down that opportunity, and I managed to secure a role at a company called Turo, which I was employee number 2 from a finance perspective, finance team member number 2. So it was basically myself and the CFO just working in lockstep to do all things finance related. So worked there for about 4 years. Basically took that company to be in a state that it was public ready. So just before I relocated back to Australia, they actually filed, or just after, sorry, they filed their S1. So their intentions to go public.
Oh, wow. It's a huge journey.
It was awesome. So I came in at the end of their Series D. So as part of the Series D process, I went through a Series E fundraising round with them. Just the exposure and the kind of variety that role provided was like the best, probably my career highlight, like the best role of my career to date. I had so much fun, kind of, you see the fruits of your labor. What you're doing was so tangible. We were implementing new process. We were building things out from scratch. We, secured $250 million investment to kind of keep payroll and the lights on. It was just, really exciting. But yeah, I had my first child in the States. My husband and I are both from Australia. It just kind of COVID had hit. It just made sense from a personal perspective to come back to Australia. So we moved
Mm.
back 2 years ago, and at which point I joined Coles. So Coles, huge kind of
That tiny,
retailer.
tiny startup. That's Coles.
Yeah,
Scrappy.
exactly. Yeah, you may have heard of them before. Um, so yeah, definitely wasn't finance team member number two here, but yeah. So working for Coles here we've recently renamed as the digital team. So previously ecom, now called digital. But essentially,
Mhm.
what we're doing here is getting groceries to all of our customers across Australia nationally, and I'm supporting them in basically looking at the commercials around our various digital products, so our app and our website, and then our other kind of more tangible products being like our click and collect offering, our home delivery.
Mhm.
So I'm helping support the teams in getting investment across the business. As you can
Mhm.
imagine, there was like a huge kind of strategic repivot to online, and so
Mhm.
like on the basis of COVID hitting. So we've become like a real kind of strategic focus, which is exciting because there's lots more kind of eyes on digital at Coles, but there's a lot more scrutiny and kind of a lot more rigor and kind of process that we need to put in place. So that's really kind of where I'm focusing at the moment, is just kind of upskilling the teams around that kind of governance and structure and cadence from a finance perspective.
And does it operate like its own unit entirely, the ecom or
No.
the
So, yeah, good question. So, we actually are like a subset of supermarkets. So, from if you're looking at our
Mhm.
financials, we get consolidated and rolled up into the supermarket numbers. We do
Yeah.
have like a management P&L. So, we do report out, like our exec is essentially responsible for a P&L that has all the various cost lines, but from a kind of statutory or financial reporting perspective, where we're not a standalone business unit. So that comes with
Mhm.
its challenges because there's a lot of like intersection and interdependencies as a result of that. And we
Mm.
really do need to be working very cross-functionally, and it's such a beast here. But yeah, I think like the
Mm.
benefit of that is also that you kind of can see where we land from a P&L perspective as well, because we can actually attribute those costs and carve it out as well.
Mm. And can you explain a little bit more about how your role as a finance business partner? So what that actually looks like again?
Yeah, yeah. So my roles evolved in the 2 years that I've been at Cog. So initially, I started as a business partner to one of our particular kind of digital areas. We call them crews here. So I was basically business partner for a crew, which is essentially, or it was a combination of four products. So I would
Mhm.
support them from like a commercial kind of business partnering perspective. So if we wanted to launch a new kind of initiative with Coles Plus, for example, I'd have to do some financial modeling around, did that actually make sense from both a customer and a Coles perspective, and provide
Mm.
some recommendations back to the team. My role has now evolved, whereby I'm now responsible for all of our investments. So back to my point around historically Coles, just being born out of a bricks and mortar kind of physical existence. We didn't have great
Mm.
kind of structure or financial governance from a digital perspective. And so we've really kind of
Mm.
transitioned our ways of working to really lend itself more so to that agile. I feel like that's like the cool
Mm.
term these days, but we're really trying to move towards these agile ways of working, which for
Yeah.
Coles basically means that rather than going through, like, as an example, we used to go through business case like requests to actually secure capital investment. But what that meant was that it was very kind of project focused, very project centric, and it was time and materials kind of scope and and um
Mm.
and time bound. In a like digital setting, that just doesn't make sense because we're doing iterative releases, like we're constantly refreshing or releasing updates on our app and our website, whereas we're not
Mm.
really time and scope bound. And so that kind of project way of working didn't work, like it doesn't work in a digital setting. So my kind of focus now is just being around how do we secure investment, and how do we secure it, then how do we report back. So it's been a bit of a
Mm.
mindset shift for the CEO and the CFO, and kind of taking them on that journey as to, like, we're not, a project complete isn't how we're going to assess how we utilize those funds, or an ROI for that matter. It's more so like,
Mm.
what did we release on, what were our OKRs? Did we deliver on what we said we did? what's been the
Mm.
customer sentiment, what's been the uplift, kind of more those digital metrics that you might be more familiar with. But
Yeah, right.
yeah, so that's kind of where my role has evolved in the past kind of 6 or so months.
That's really interesting. I presume the Milk Run Woolworths acquisition, did it have a bit of a ruffling of the feathers, or was it a bit of a, or was it, oh well, you kind of expected that to happen?
I think it just validates the business model, and if anything, it kind of gave us, like, we've kind of been the ugly stepsister for a little while. Like, we haven't had a lot of love and attention. We've been less than 10% of Coles in general, so we just haven't had that much spotlight shone on us. So to kind of see other players coming into the market and have a go at it, it just really validates where we sit and what that there really is kind of a business model here. And
Mm,
so I think, yeah, if anything, it's exciting. It's kind of, yeah, like we've learned a lot from that.
mm,
And so it just, yeah, just really kind of validates the business model.
yeah, nice. Yeah, it's really interesting. It's been such a I've actually got the, now I think about it, coming up in a couple of weeks. I have her name's Laura Archer. She's now the head of finance of Milk Run, but she's from Woolworths. So I'm really just
Oh,
going
no.
deep on
Yeah.
grocery delivery. I
Competitor
really
wars.
like my
Yeah.
food. Uh, and so I guess switching tack a little is one of my favorite questions, just to make us feel better about us when we um, do make a mistake here and there. Do you care to share anything that at work you're like, oh, I can't believe that just happened, or something that wakes you up in the middle of the night? It might be a few years on, but I'm always makes me feel better about myself.
Yeah. I think for me, I think um I think my biggest mistake in my career, like, which is something that I'm like continuously learning, but really just like taking the time to step back. Like, this is like a general kind of comment, but I think like so often you can just be so in the weeds and so task focused that you can't always see like how it all kind of comes together. And um, so I think for me, like, biggest mistake was just always like early in my career, just constantly being like super busy and hard doing the BAU stuff, not really kind of challenging that, like, the broader impact and the effect that I may have had on others. So um, I think like through all of that, like, kind of all of those learnings and that experience and kind of getting the feedback, um, I think like really kind of stopping to kind of, before you dive in, I think like stopping to really get to the
Mm,
root of what actually are you trying to answer, what problem are you solving here. I think that's one thing
yeah.
that still learning, but I think like, well, it's not a mistake. I think like it's, yeah, I think that's like really important, and one of my kind of key takeaways from my
Mm,
career is not to just dive right in, is really just to kind of stop and pause.
mm. I absolutely have started to really realize that. Like, I used to find like doing retrospectives on a project or a quarter, I'd be like, oh, I just want to get on to the next thing. Like, I know I need to do this. But the learnings that come out of that, it's so crucial. And like actually taking that space to like reflect on what you're doing. And when you're running an experiment or a test, making sure you are ruling out, like, don't embark on multiple things, because then everything's just going to be so blurred. Like,
Yeah,
just do one thing, test one thing, and then you can move on and you'll probably end up moving faster.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, agreed.
that's what we're working on at Wheel, is like smooth. Slow is smooth. Smooth is fast. I think I
Yeah,
got it right.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
something
yeah,
along
I've heard
those
that.
lines.
I like that. Yeah, yeah,
Um, and do you? I know you're probably you've got quite a bit of a impressive career to date so far. But do you have any, like, what are your career goals?
yeah. So my career goals ultimately to get to strategic CFO. I I think that's like my end state. I'd really love to be managing and building and developing a team. I think that would give me a lot of job satisfaction. It's kind of today, like working with others, it's that whole team vibe. I really missed that during COVID. So I'd love to be able to continue to do that and to be able to develop others under me. I think that would give me a lot of, yeah, job satisfaction.
Mm,
I think like ways to get there, I think like that business partnering, obviously trying to be more like focused around that kind of strategic go-to-market, like being the person that people can come to. I really want to build that and flesh that muscle in terms of, like in terms of being that kind of thought partner slash thought leader. But ultimately, that's kind of the space that I'd love to move into and grow into.
Yeah. Well, I think you'll absolutely nail it because it seems like you've got such a depth of like financial acumen, and even just talking to you over the last half an hour, like you've obviously got that blend of like great communication skills, empathetic, but also that sort of like financial background as well. So I will
Oh,
watch this space. I think you're
shucks, yeah.
on to great things. Um, and then I'm just, my final question, do you think you've got any like secret superpower or talent you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, kind of, yeah, tricky question. I'm like, that always puts me on the spot. It makes me feel awkward. But I think for me, um, I think resilience. I think, one thing working in San Francisco really kind of taught me like that grit factor. I think like that's also a bit of a cliche, but I think, there was multiple job knockdowns. And, I kind of reading Anna Wintour's like biography right now, I kind of realized that it's not just me in terms of your career path's never linear. And
Mm,
so I think like what you learn from sometimes I don't know what else to call it apart from failings, but it's definitely not a failing. I think, setbacks maybe is a better word, but I think
mm,
I think like one thing I've learned and one thing I'm really proud of is my resilience. I think, like you kind of continue to be chin up and see like the silver lining out of everything. And I think
mm,
everything has a way of, not that you want to kind of rest on your laurels, but I think things do sometimes happen for a reason. And sometimes it's just like a not meant to be. And so I think, what you can learn from those kind of setbacks, I really try to learn from. And so I think that's one of my
mm,
superpowers is that kind of resilience and like kind of personal reflection and growth.
mm. Yeah, I think Ted Lasso has a sentiment on that. I watched it the other day and I was like, I need to remember that, but maybe I need to find it again because
I
obviously it
actually
didn't
saw
stick
something
with
on
me.
LinkedIn about that and Ted Lasso. I haven't watched Ted Lasso, but yeah, someone had posted something on LinkedIn. I was like, oh my gosh, that like I totally jive. It was like, yeah,
Yeah,
something I think I know which quote you're talking about, but yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna have to find it. But
Yeah,
definitely watch Ted Lasso. Oh, it like
good.
feel good, yeah, many like little nuggets of wisdom as well. Well, Alice, thank you so much for joining us today. I could feel like I could speak to you for hours. Super interesting, and I really love. I know what you mean. Like startups is great because you can really see the impact of your work. But I feel like you've kind of got that in a big giant as well. And also it's something that's so tangible. Like everyone needs their
Yeah.
groceries. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
it's super interesting. Well, Alice, I hope you have a lovely day. Really appreciative
Yeah,
of
you
your
as well.
time. And I guess we'll have to stay tuned because I've got the grocery rivalry in the next few weeks. So I'll have
Yeah.
milk run up. So, Alice, have a great day. I will see you soon.